Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Who's at the Table. My name is Sharissa Jackson, and I am the host and creator of this wonderful interview series of women veterans. I'm so proud and honored to bring this interview series to you all so you can hear about wonderful women veterans and what we're doing out here in the community. Oftentimes, we're not asked to be at the table, but we're deserving to be at the table to make those decisions. And for those people that don't have women veterans at the table making those decisions, you need to have us there. I'm so honored to have a wonderful, inspiring guest with us here today. She is none other than Ms. Denetra Hampton. Thank you so much, Ms. Hampton, for being here today. How are you and what's going on with you?
Well, thank you for having me. And, it's wonderful to see you again. I have been following you for quite some time. And, we go way back. We have a lot in common besides just being veterans. But it is so great to see you. And, thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. And you're absolutely right. We go way back from when you had your organization for nurses by nurses. And as a matter of fact, I was going to wear my shirt today. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to wear that today, but I want you to know that I love that shirt. We're both nurses. A lot of people don't know that. We were both clinicians in the military. And so for us to have met in that way, it continues to be one of those important moments in my life to have met you, coming and supporting your For Nurses by Nurses platform. So thank you.
Likewise. It's wonderful to have met you and to see you grow and flourish and now have such a wonderful platform. It's absolutely amazing. And I'm so honored to be here.
So let's talk about, you said you were in the Navy. So let's talk about your military career. What was that like? And first of all, why did you choose the Navy over all the other branches? What happened there?
Well, I did 22 years in the United States Navy. And, I went from enlisted to the officer's rank. So there was a collaboration or a marriage of how I served in the Navy, which was great for me. I like to think of it as grassroots. When you go from being enlisted to officer, there's a certain stinge there that you come with. And, I did the Navy because that's what I knew. My family members did the Navy, so that's what I had heard about. And so with that hearing, I ventured into that. And it just became the standard for my growing up, my background. And so I went into the Navy. And it served me well because I'll tell you, even after, post-Navy, I wouldn't change a thing. I'm glad that I did the Navy because it has given me so many things that has allowed me to operate in the space that I am in today.
And I think another coincidence is I too was enlisted. I came in as E1 and I crossed over as an officer in the Air Force when I became a nurse. And so it kind of builds you a different kind of way when you start on the enlisted side and then you cross over to an officer side. Yeah. And I don't think a lot of people understand what that does and how we become better leaders from my perspective when we are enlisted and go to the officer side. So what's your perspective on that?
Well, entrepreneurship. I am a solo entrepreneur to speak, and we know that entrepreneurship is hard anyway, but when you're doing it from a solo perspective, it's double hard. Well, being in the military and having had that background of being enlisted to officer forms kind of a resiliency. I think there's a certain pedigree there that allows you to function outside of the military in a way that has, hemorrhaged over to my entrepreneurship and has allowed me to be successful in this space. So being enlisted allowed me to develop relationships, gave me that foundation of developing solid relationships, which I use today. And then, going into the officer rank the way that I did was a bridge that allowed me to develop how I create and how I, tell stories, because that was a story in itself for me, going from enlisted to officer. So now, functioning as an entrepreneur and a storyteller, all of that has come together and allowed me to do what I do today.
So did you always have that entrepreneurial spirit even when you were enlisted, or do you think it happened when you became an officer and knew you were going to transition? When did you get that bug, if you will?
No, never thought I'd be running a business, and I definitely never thought I'd be producing film. So I tell you, I think there's a time for everything. And I think when that time comes, you become aware. The universe has a certain, way of introducing things to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a way of preparing you for the next big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I call that, that's how things happen for me. I never imagined after doing 22 years that I'd be a business owner. And I never imagined that I'd be producing documentaries. So all of that came as a preparation from being in the Navy. I mean, the small things matter. I mean, we never know how things are going to develop, but they all developed me into being who I am today.
And so when you decided to cross over from the enlisted to the officer corps, was that an easy transition for you?
It was. I mean, going from enlisted and going to nursing school, I graduated from Hampton University. Going to nursing school, getting my nursing degree, and then coming back in as an officer, it was pretty easy. I think, I had already did 15 years as enlisted. And so I had that foundation of what, discipline was. And so it was just a matter of carrying out that discipline. And, that's what we did. And we ended up being, in the nurse corps. So here we are now, retired lieutenant. And it all served me well. So, yeah.
And so how was your transition afterwards? Because you went from enlisted and then you did an officer, you did 22 years. How was your transition after the military?
That wasn't easy. And, because when I left the Navy, I didn't want to leave the Navy.
Oh, wow.
There was a situation that occurred that forced me to have to retire. And that decision, and again, life happens as it should, and it reveals as it should. And I say that because it's true. I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because there was a decision that I had to make, and that decision forced me to have to retire. Okay, and upon that retirement, I did what everyone else would do when you get out of the Navy. You look for a job. Go looking for a job. But in that search, something happened between me having created this course, this NCLEX course, that helped nursing students. You know what the NCLEX is. They can't pass the nursing test. That's our professional license to practice. And, if you can't pass that test, then you can't practice as a professional nurse. That's the livelihood of people. But I created this course that allowed people to pass. Now, there was a distinct difference in my course and a regular course, which I like to say, because I only taught students who had been out of school 10, 15 years. My longest has been 25 years.
Whoa.
And you know what? They're registered nurses today.
Wow.
So there was a particular thing that I concentrated on. My craft was that area. And so all of the students who came to me over the past 10 years, because I retired from the Navy, Sharice, in 2010. We're in 2020.
Wow.
And I started that craft in 2010. So all of the students who have been through my particular course, on an average, they've been out of school 7 years and have taken that test 10 times. And they're nurses today. So I had a particular arena that I mastered. And I think that is the impact that shaped who I am today. And the lives that came out of that course, they have created who Denetra Hampton is today. Those nurses who came through my course, they forced me to learn, research, develop, create. All of that was a part of who I am now, what you're witnessing today. And it all came from that transition, that forced transition. It wasn't something that Denetra said, okay, I'm done. Here's my papers. It was a decision that the universe, I like to say that now. I mean, looking back, you don't know why things happen, but everything happens for a reason. And my transition out of the Navy was destined for me to be what I am today.
Absolutely.
I think I did my time and served well. And so here we are now, serving in another capacity.
Yeah. And let's backtrack for a little bit, because I know a lot of the viewers are not nurses. They're not in the medical field. And when you talk about that NCLEX, that god awful NCLEX, that nursing exam, right? Let me tell you, when my daughter took that test, I know I called you, girl, you know, can she get in your course? Because I want to make sure she passed the first time. And I know for me, I was still in the military when I took that NCLEX. And so imagine being a single mom, going through nursing school, and then having to study for that NCLEX exam, sweating bullets, and knowing that this, like you said, was going to be how I made my money by passing this NCLEX. So tell the viewers how important and how hard is that NCLEX, because like you said, there's nurses who take that test 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times because they know once they get that RN behind their name and get that nursing license, that's where the money is. So tell the viewers, how difficult is that test, and why was that your niche? Did you see something in the community that said, I need to help these nurses, these students? What was it?
Well, it wasn't a niche, it was my call.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it wasn't a niche, it was my call. And I say that because I had never did it before. I had never taught people, particularly people who had been out of school that long. I had never taught school before. My first teaching lesson was the NCLEX. I didn't come out of an
educator, Denetra? You weren't an educator?
I'm not an educator. I'm a grassroots production.
Whoa.
And, you know, I had never did this stuff before, but, you know, when the students came to me, you know, God didn't send me the student right out of school because, you know, if you can pass the NCLEX, you can pass the NCLEX. You don't need anyone, really. I mean, we have these things out there, to tell you the truth. I've been doing this for 10 years. We have these courses and stuff, but a student who has been prepared in their nursing curriculum, and most curriculums prepare the students the way that they should. Foundation of nursing science is the thing that helps you pass that NCLEX. When you don't have a solid foundation of nursing science, it's going to be really difficult to pass it, because that's what the NCLEX is based off of, facts, not fiction. It's based off of facts. And if you don't know the facts of nursing, you will have an issue passing it. And facts come from our science. That's what it is. It comes from science. And that's people who have a deficiency in the nursing science. And I understood that. And that became the foundation of how I built my course. And when I did that, I saw the difference in the students. And the students became able to understand their deficiencies. And once they understood their deficiencies, they were able to apply that to that NCLEX. And then they were successful. And the thing about passing the NCLEX is that a lot of students get so down on themselves thinking that, you know, I can't pass this test, something's wrong with me. But it's absolutely nothing wrong with those students. Those students have went on, they're on the front line right now. And in this pandemic, and they are serving in ICUs, serving in some of the most prolific institutions in the country. And if they don't tell you that they didn't pass that NCLEX, you don't know, because that's how good they are. Not being able to pass that test has to do with deficiencies in certain things, not deficiencies in the people. And I recognize that. I recognize that it's just a deficiency in a certain area. And to me, that was nursing science. And I think that's what causes it to be most difficult, because science is hard. Science is hard.
And you know, it's awesome how you say this was truly a calling for you, because like you said, you weren't an educator. You didn't get out the military transitioning to have a business built to help students pass the NCLEX, but this was truly your calling, and you had to build it from the ground up. And I say to you, that's a testimony to your fortitude to say, I'm going to do this because I want to help people. I want to be about service.
Mm-hmm.
And to see the impact that that had and still has on nurses now, I mean, what does that do for you and your feeling? How does that make you feel?
Well, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my students. My students made Denetra Hampton.
Mm.
Oh, you're witnessing, they created me. Again, you know, I learned how to be from every transaction with my students. Every student that came into my shop or my course, they brought in a certain deficiency. Mm-hmm. And me being able to learn from that created a certain thing in myself, whether it was resiliency, whether it was critical thinking. And you have to remember, when you're creating something from scratch, that's grassroots. No, mm-hmm. There's no better learning. Mm-hmm. So I learned from them just like they learned from me. And their process created a process in me. And that's how I became the Denetra Hampton that you're witnessing today. But they, in my opinion, this is what I always say, they are all a part of me. I carry them everywhere I go. So when you see me, you see the people. Because I was told a long time ago that impact is about the people's lives that you touch. You know, you want to be like HeLa cells, you know, DNA. You want to be like Henrietta Lacks. You want to be able to insert yourself into another person. Mm-hmm. Because when you insert yourself into another person, you live forever. And so when I see my students excelling and doing well, one of the things I've learned about storytelling is that everyone has a story. But if you have created something or did something in a person's life and they can't tell their story without mentioning your name, then you've done a good thing. Mm-hmm. Because everyone has a story, but if they can't tell it without mentioning you, you've done a good thing. Mm. So I know that every nursing student has a story, mm-hmm. but they can't tell it without mentioning Ms. Hampton. Mm. That's a good thing for me. When I think about that, that's a good thing.
You're like, I'm good.
That's a good thing.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I think it's awesome just to be able to give, you know, those students hope. I mean, and we talk about Absolutely. Hope all the time when it comes to women veterans, and they're them getting out of the military and transitioning, and a lot of them feel hopeless because either they didn't prepare like they should have or didn't have the career path that you and I had with nursing, that we can go anywhere and get a job. And so a lot of you know, veterans leave the military feeling hopeless, but you've given and continue to give hope to these students who just need that Ms. Denetra to be able to say, look, it ain't about you right now. Let's work on these deficiencies that mm-hmm. you have and not take it so personal, because we're going to get you across that finish line. And I would say, you know, I remember coming to Hampton Roads and visiting you for that event. Yeah. And I remember one of your students was there. I forget her name. And she said that she had taken the NCLEX 7 times. And I'm like, oh my God. Number one, I wouldn't have said that out loud. Again, that's how we operate, you know, out of transparency in the nursing field. No one announces, oh my God, it took me 7 times to pass the NCLEX. But she was brave in saying, I had taken the NCLEX 7 times, and then I found Ms. Hampton, because everybody calls you Ms. Hampton. I found Ms. Hampton, and Ms. Hampton and I worked together for months. And I was scared, and I was like, man, am I going to go down this rabbit hole again, take this NCLEX again, and not pass? Yeah. And she said that after studying with you, working with you, she felt confident. She was like, there was no way I was going to walk in that room and not pass on the 8th try. She said, I just knew it. I felt more prepared. I felt more confident, because she said her confidence was shot. Yeah. And so when I heard her say that, I was like, well, why haven't I heard of Ms. Hampton? Why isn't Ms. Hampton all over the country teaching this course? Because there had to be more people like that nurse I met. And so how do people find you? Because there's a lot of students out here that are probably sitting and struggling right now. How do they find you? And are you sought after quite often, or are you kind of localized?
You know, again, grassroots. And, word of mouth has been my marketing. And, again, when you touch someone's life in that way, they tell 25 people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it has worked for me over the years. I haven't had, I'm not a big production company, but, we touch lives and we do it one student at a time. And that has worked for me. That's worked for me and it's been good to me. And so, the young lady that you met, she is doing even better. So, she is all over the place working and on the front line today. So, again, one student at a time is what we do.
So let's talk about what you're doing now, because we talked about you coming in enlisted, then you crossed over, then you transitioned out, and grassroots helping nurses pass their NCLEX. How did that transition from that to now you creating films? I know at the beginning, you and I were talking, I'm like, you're the next Tyler Perry when it comes to filmmaking. How did you now decide to go in that direction? What happened?
As I mentioned earlier, that's the value of process. It's the value of going from one space to the next, because unfortunately, I don't teach anymore. So we went from teaching nursing science on a chalkboard to doing nursing science on film. So that's the transition. That's the level where God transitioned me. So my platform has enlarged. So now we're doing nursing science and culture and health disparities on film. So when a person sees my film, they're going to get three things: nursing, nursing science, and the culture. And all of those things bridge, because this production company that we have is really focused on helping bridge the gap of health disparities, all through a lens of nursing and science and culture, because I don't believe you have an advocacy if it's not backed by science. You just don't have an advocacy. And we know that nursing science is our science. And so it has to be included in all of the films. Our initial film, The Black Angels, the story of those African-American nurses in Staten Island, New York, risked their lives to care for patients with tuberculosis when there was no cure. There you have this disparity, segregation. And, this film talks about one particular Black angel, who is Marjorie Tucker Reed, who was born in Norfolk, Virginia, but ended up going to Staten Island to serve and was a part of that story. But the whole story talks about the contributions of nurses, African-American nurses, to nursing and science. And it talks about those untold stories. And that was the initial breakout film. And so now we have the Year of the Nurse and Midwife film, where we're talking about who we are now, our contributions over the past 200 years. Florence Nightingale, mother of modern nursing. It's a celebration of her birthday, but we also are bringing in the midwife. And I bring in Maud Callan out of Pineville, South Carolina. But most importantly, I bring in Dr. Lenora Langley. She is the first African-American nurse, military nurse, to receive a Purple Heart. She's in this film. And I think it's important that the world learns about who she is, which is why we brought her in. You want to talk about veteran.
Yes.
About who we are.
Yeah.
And the service that we have done, the contribution that Dr. Langley has done. You're talking about African-American, the first African-American nurse to receive a Purple Heart. What she has done in the military, no one knows about. I didn't know about her, and she's a Navy nurse. So when I met her, I was overwhelmed. I was absolutely overwhelmed to sit down with Dr. Langley.
Wow.
And I think the world is going to be so overjoyed to meet her, to hear her story, to hear the what she's done in Iraq, everything that happened to her, and to see that Purple Heart. I think it's something that needed to be done, and I'm grateful that I had the honor to bring her story to life. But more importantly, honored to be able to bring Maud Callan's story. Maud Callan is known, but not known. She's a hit picker. As nurses, we know about Florence Nightingale, but we have a lot of culture in this particular film. And we represent the oldest, we're talking about the oldest nursing sorority, Chi Eta Phi. Talking about Hampton University, one of the most, you know, of course, my alma mater.
Of course.
But we're talking about HBCU.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we need to recognize, you know, their value and continue to, you know, raise the voice about who they are and what they have been in the culture when it comes to education and when it comes to the African American experience, but also who they are to the history of nursing. You know, we have stories that have not been told, and part of my filmmaking is telling those stories. So we went from the Black Angels, nursing, nursing science, health disparities, tuberculosis.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are with the year of the nurse, pandemic, COVID-19, nursing, nursing science, and also the first African-American nurse, veteran, United States Naval Nurse Corps to receive a Purple Heart, Dr. Lenora Langley. And I'm telling you, Therese, if you don't know who she is, you're going to be overwhelmed with who she is when you see the film. Absolutely.
Wow. I mean, just, I thought the Black Angels was like, I'm like, give her an Oscar already. I mean, give her something for that film. And now to hear about your new production, I can't wait, and to know how she was a veteran. Again, another unsung hero, historical figure that no one, even you and I as nurses.
And you know, I served in the Navy.
Yeah.
And for some reason, our paths just did not cross.
Wow.
But at a time such as this,
Mm-hmm.
I was introduced to her and learned about her for this film. And I tell you, I am so honored to be able to tell the world about her. It's mind blowing. I mean, just sitting in the room with her, you know, it was just so overwhelming. It was such an honor because of who she is and what she's done for the country, but also what she continues to represent. You know, she represents so much as an African-American woman and as a nurse, and a nurse who decided that she would lay her life down if need be. This is a powerful image, and I wanted to bring that to screen, and I'm grateful that God gave me that opportunity. I just think that, you know, people are just going to be overwhelmed to meet, not just her, but in particular her, but all of the people who are going to be in the film.
So what made you decide to do film? Again, you know, you created a platform to help nurses pass the NCLEX. That was never in your script. And now, now you are in film. How did that happen?
Again, I just think it's that space where you become something in your life, a purpose. If you're on purpose, you become something, and then God hands you the next level. He gives you the next baton, so to speak. And I think that I had served my time as that educator. And I think I like to say, you know, it was a green light. And, you know, God gave me that green light and say, okay, now I'm going to enlarge your territory and I need you to do this. And part of that transition was he brought the story of the Black Angels across my path. And when that story crossed my path, now you have to remember, I had never picked up a camera in all my days.
That's what I was going to ask you. Did you ever pick up a camera?
I had never picked up a book when I created the NCLEX. I had never picked up a camera when I found out about the Black Angels. We know that the call, God qualifies those that he called. Same deal with the next level. He qualified me to do that film. And qualification came with having the right people at the right time. So he had a person who came into my life at that particular time who did film and helped me do that film. I produced that film and wrote the script. This person filmed it and edited and did all of those things. So I learned everything in that process. This is why you and I talk about how valuable process is. You have to trust the process because the process is going to create in you what you need to be for the next thing. So everything that I learned with the Black Angels was grassroots, from picking up a camera to legalities to all of those things. That carried me over to the next big thing, which was the Year of the Nurse. Purpose wants you to finish the job. I finished the Black Angels, and then God gave me a bigger job, which was the Year of the Nurse. So what I brought over to the Year of the Nurse couldn't have happened unless I did the Black Angels. It's all about process, and it's all about purpose when you are running a course of destiny, so to speak. When your life is on that chain, you have to allow those certain things to happen. So I became a producer and a writer and a script writer and all of those things with that process of the Black Angels. It was a grassroots project, but I had to do it that way in order to learn it the way I needed to do the Year of the Nurse. So here we are now with the Year of the Nurse and going into another film. So all of it just kind of happened divinely. You know, I wasn't trained. I didn't go to film school, none of that stuff, but I was qualified by, you know, those divine circumstances. That's how I like to say it. And so here we are now on our third film, going into our third film with short stories, with short films. And the production company is moving in a direction that I think, you know, God intended. And so what you do is you just, again, like I said to you, process is the golden key. You trust it, you learn from it, and then you become the person you need to get to the next level. So that's how everything worked for me.
You know, you speak about the calling and what you're called to do, to be on purpose. A lot of times when we don't feel like it's our calling, right? The first thing we do is question it. You know, am I supposed to be a filmmaker? Am I supposed to be an educator? Did you ever have those moments when you're just like, a filmmaker? Who am I? You know, why am I called to be a filmmaker? Did you ever have any of those moments?
No.
Oh.
The call pulls you. And the call is like giving birth. You ask a mother, did you ever think you were having a baby? No, she knew. That's why for me, when you're not the first person who's ever asked me that. How did you know? It's a thing where I say, well, if you have to ask, it's probably not your call. And I truly believe that. People will question it, but you will not question it because God gave you the vision. He didn't give them the vision. So people may say, wow, you doing what you do. It's taking all this time. Nothing's happening. But God plants that seed in you. And when he plants a seed in you, he pulls that seed. And only you can feel it. So never, not once, which is why you saw me 10 years ago, or maybe 6, 7 years ago, doing one thing. And here we are now running a full-fledged production company.
Oh my goodness. Which is why I wanted you here at the table to tell the viewers and to tell women veterans that where you start doesn't always mean where you're going to end up. And that there has to be a purpose, there has to be a calling, but we have to listen to our internal selves to understand what that is. And to see you go through that transition, like we both are following each other on social media. I'm like, I gotta have Miss Hampton at the table because I remember her this way and what she was doing. And now she's off on another level doing some very creative things. And I just appreciate your strength and your creativity and your vulnerability. I mean, because I'm sure there had to be moments where you were just like, man, I could just go to bedside and, you know, make that X amount of dollars and not have to worry about, you know, writing and staying up, you know, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning with production. Did you have those moments where you would have a little flashback and be like, I coulda, woulda, shoulda?
You know, it gets hard.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing like this is, you know, easy. But, you know, when you have a certain purpose there, I think it's effortless. It's hard, but it's effortless. It's a difference. When you are doing it in your own might is when it's hard and you don't have any direction. But when it's hard and it's effortless, it's easy. And I hope that makes sense.
It does make sense.
That I felt moving from the years that you and I have known each other. I felt that it was difficult and I didn't know the direction, but hey, isn't that what faith about?
Mm-hmm.
You can't see, but you know. And that's how I saw it all. I just had to go in the direction and be, confident in the process. And that's what we did. And so here we are now, telling great stories.
And so after creating your first film, Black Angels, and I saw that you guys were like a traveling production company. You guys were going all over to different states, showcasing the Black Angels. How did that make you feel? Number one, first, before we get into that, you had this vision, obviously, that this story landed on you. You said you wanted to put it on film. You started that process, and then you completed that film.
Yeah.
And then you put that film to the test and had viewers. So what was that day like, your very first time showcasing that film? This is your first film. What was that feeling like on that day when the lights went down, the film was on the big screen, people were sitting in the audience? What was that feeling like? And then when the lights came back on and you got the feedback, what was going on inside of you?
Well, I tell you, during the filmmaking, Sharice, of the Black Angels, the Black Angel that I had the privilege of meeting, Marjorie Tucker Reed, she died during our production. So, that was probably one of the hardest things for me because I knew that God had sent me to tell her story. So having that on my shoulders was another thing that kept me moving to finish the project, because Marjorie her story had not been heard. And I knew that God had given me that job to tell her story. You're talking about someone who had the kind of courage that we could never dream about. And, the type of grace, and meeting her and talking to her and her family gave me my why. It gave me why I was doing what I was doing. There was nothing before that compared to who Marjorie Tucker Reed was. Sitting in a room with her, Denetra Hampton can't compare. So I was given the why for my position at that particular time. I had did a lot of things, but when I got to that space, Marjorie Tucker Reed was my why. And so I had to finish the job. So finishing that job, when we lifted the curtains to our first premiere, which was here in Norfolk, Virginia, sold out. And the people in that audience got to see Marjorie Tucker Reed on screen. It was a standing ovation. It was confirmation on why I was doing what I was doing now. And I got that. And then I realized that everything that I had did up until that particular moment had prepared me for that particular moment. And it was part of now bringing to light those stories that had paved the way for me and you and other people. And you have to remember, at a time such as this, at a time where we as America are facing social injustice, economic injustice, health disparities, we get to tell these stories of people who have fought that path long before Denetra Hampton came along. And so when I finished that story and the reaction from the people in that audience let me know that I was on the right path. And then we took that story on tour. So we went to the top 10 nursing school, Johns Hopkins, UCLA, Penn. We went University of South Carolina. We took that story on the road. That's when I knew that I had stepped into some waters that was getting ready to do something different. Everybody, no one, and I will say of all the people that saw that Black Angels film, 99% of them had never heard of it. So when you talk about powerful, it was a story that needed to be heard. It was a story that needed to be told. And I was graced to be the person that the universe chose to tell that Marjorie Tucker Reid story. And so to see her on screen now around the country is just a powerful testimony of who God is and what his word is never void, is what that is. You know, Marjorie Tucker Reid was in that nursing home. No one knew who she is, but now everybody knows who Marjorie Tucker Reid is. And that was the job that God gave me. And so she became my why. And now everyone in Dr. Lenora Langlius became my why. And so here we are now continuing to tell those stories of the contributions that, you know, African-American nurses have made to nursing and to science and to medicine. And I'm just honored to be able to do that.
So you had a successful first film. Were there any anxiety, you know, pretty much like Michael Jackson's first album, right? Everybody's like, man, that album was the bomb. How is he going to follow up with another great album?
Wow.
Had any anxiety of like, man, is this second film going to measure up or exceed the expectations of the first film?
You know, it's so ironic that you say that. How is this film going to measure up? I tell you, my husband and I were in Budapest, and we were on a train. And when I got on that train, there was a couple sitting in front of us. And I tell this story just simply because you made that comment. And the couple asked, they were from America too. They were going to Vienna, I think. We were going there too, but we were all getting on the train. And she wanted to know what we did. You know, what were we doing? And come to find out, he was a Navy chaplain. And we had that in common. And I'm going to make this story short because, honey, I could tell a long story, but I'm going to make it short. He was a Navy chaplain, and I was retired lieutenant. So we had that in common. Yeah. And I said to him, I was now producing film. I had just released The Black Angels. And, you know, telling them about the story, the wife said, how are you going to come off of a story like that? That's exactly what she said to me. And, you know, I sat there on that train, Sharice, and I thought to myself, how am I going to come off of that? Yeah. I said, Lord, now that was when I might have said, now you asked me to tell this story, but how am I going to come off of that? COVID-19 hit. About 2 months later. That was in October, December. We were in a pandemic. And God said, that's how you're going to come off of that. Year of the Nurse, 2020. So when you asked that question, it triggered something in me. This is what I call divine purpose. When COVID-19 hit, that was God saying to me, that's how you're going to come. So I need you to tell this story. And so you might be saying to yourself, how are you going to come off of that? Well, wait till the next film. So it just is so ironic that you said that, because that literally was what that lady said to me. How are you going to come off of the Black Angels? Here we are now telling Year of the Nurse, you know, and Midwife. Yeah. And that's how I came off of that.
And, you know, it's interesting what happens, you know, when you sit and you try and figure out, you know, what am I going to do next, or what's the next thing in store? And even me as the chief medical executive sitting here, you know, we're quarantined, we're now out, you know, on Capitol Hill advocating, and I'm not touching and seeing veterans. And I had that same epiphany. I'm like, okay, I'm sitting here, you know, I'm all about the people. What am I going to do to make sure that people know that I'm still here and I'm here supporting them, and I'm still their chief executive that's going to be here and about service? And that's exactly how Who's at the Table came to be. I was like, our stories need to be heard, though we're still sitting here. Instead of watching Netflix, instead of, you know, just watching, you know, all kinds of movies and things of that nature on television, why not hear about us and
And
what we're doing.
you're
So
doing a fantastic
it's
job.
just coincidental that even with you and your experience of your second film, you know, that epiphany came to me as well, that why not use COVID as an opportunity to tell stories, to hear stories of triumphs and challenges and obstacles and us being out here doing great things. Because like you said, stories need to be heard. And so no anxiety about your second film, huh? None?
None. None.
That is
None.
amazing.
It's fantastic. And I say fantastic, not so much in the evaluation of the film, but fantastic because of the people who have contributed to it. And I'm talking about from leadership all the way up to the science of it. It is going to be riveting. And I hope that everyone who's watching this will go out and register for it and be ready to watch. It's going to be fantastic.
And so I think it's important for the viewers to know that once again, here you are as a woman veteran. No one would have ever known or heard of you as being a film producer, director, documentaries. They wouldn't have known that a woman veteran is doing said things. So why do you think it's important that they hear about what you're doing, hear about what other women veterans are doing?
You know, it's so many reasons for that particular question. But I tell you, one of the main things is that, you know, veterans have this stigma about, you know, what we can be or what we have been. But rarely are it talked about the triumphs that we have made. We're more than homelessness. We're more than mental illness. We're more than having served a country for years. We're more than, you know, just having been a part of the American story. We are also part of creating in people's lives, because in my case, not only did I serve 22 years, but after leaving the Navy, I came out and did, you know, social impact, did a social mentor. And that is serving the community. And it's just not me. It is other women veterans who are doing those type of social impact mentors. And that comes from the resiliency that we have all acquired, the pedigree that we possess from the service that we have contributed to the American story. And it's not just about telling those traumas. It's not just about telling those infractions that have happened on women veterans. It's about the unique things that we have contributed to this American story. And I hope that my story is going to give people that eye, that image, that visual of what women veterans do once they have not only served their country, they come out and they serve their community in a way that impacts, you know, the lives of others in a different capacity. And so for me, I'm hoping that not only my students, but any other my women veteran comrades are saying, you know what, look at what she's done. She served 22 years in the United States Navy. All the same obstacles, the same culture that we did. But what she did, she came out and she made an impact on the lives of others in a different way. And now look what she's done. She has a production company and she's telling the stories of people. Now, this is a different way that people image, you know, they envision women veterans, because we tell all these traumatic stories about who we are, but we're so much more than that. You know, even those who have suffered, they are so much more than that suffrage. And I think that, you know, the platform that I have, I hope that that is going to be a voice for that. And, you know, just like what you are doing, it's a voice for not just what we as sisters suffer in the military, but that when we leave the military, we have so much more that we can give. And that's my story, you know, giving to people in another way that people can envision the woman veteran.
I think it's inspiring. I think it's empowering as well, because like you said, you know, most people that think about women veterans, considering the situation that we're in now with the military sexual trauma and things of that nature, we all know about veteran suicides. we tend to go in that direction on a veteran because of that's what we see, that's what we hear, that's what we read about. But that's why it was important for me to bring you here to the table so people can see that we're so much more than that. Not that those things don't matter, not that those things are not important, but we're also on the other side of things as well, where we are triumphant. We are great CEOs, great filmmakers, great people out here producing, editing, and there's so much more to us than those traumas, if you will. So I appreciate your sentiments about that. But I know you and I can talk forever because we're those kinds of people, right? So, so we're going to go into my favorite part of the interview, which is the rapid fire part. And I think it's really cool because you're creative. So I know some of your responses to these rapid fire fill in the blanks are going to be really, really good.
Oh, so, no, your rapid fire is pretty hot.
They're meant to be hot. So we're going to get started here, but I know you're going to knock it out the park with some great answers. So the first one, I start off slow and easy, and then, you know, they kind of get a little bit more spicy. So the first one is, my life without the military would have been?
Absolutely nothing. I believe that. I believe that everything that we did in the military created who you are witnessing today.
Wow. Being creative has helped you
tell great stories. Creativity allows you to shape what people may not see. And so that creativity brings it out of, you know, we say hidden figure, but the storyteller can bring out the hidden figure in a story.
And so who would you say is the hidden figures that you have put out there so far?
Well, we just talked about Marjorie Tucker Reed, and now we're talking about Dr. Lenora Langlius, and of course, Maud Callan. These are all people who have contributed to nursing and medicine and to science in ways that, you know, we only read about or that we think about because none of them are in our books, but we just think about what those people are. But now we can visualize them on screen. And I think that's pretty creative.
Being behind the camera gives you?
I don't know. You know, being behind the camera now, I'm not so much behind the camera. I am a person who makes it happen. I am a person who says, we're going to finish the job as the producer. But being behind the camera actually sings, as you're saying, it kind of gives me the feeling that, you know, everyone has a story. And that story is valid. That's what it gives me. It makes me realize even more that everyone's story is valuable.
Women veterans' strongest attributes are?
Our resiliency. We're resilient, and you know, we have a certain pedigree, as I like to say. We have a certain type of thing, a certain culture, and when we walk in the room, it's in that stance, it's in that walk, it's in that gait. People know she must have been in the military, you know, and it's in everything that we do. We have a discipline, we have a pedigree, we have a resilience, and we have a certain aura that for me spells honor, spells courage, and it's in everything that we do. And I think that's one of the greatest things about having served in the military.
3 things in your life that bring you joy are?
Great conversation, great experience, and you know what? Travel.
I know you love to travel. I see your travels, girl.
But I'm telling you, this conversation, priceless. The experience, priceless. And when you learn to appreciate conversations and experiences, enlarge those as you go through life, you have a greater appreciation of what, you know, this life is. So great conversations, great experiences, all those things are part of my survivorship.
And so I know you travel a lot, Denetra. What does traveling do for you? Are you just that inquisitive about new locations? And if so, I mean, you and your husband, I just lived through you guys' travel on social media. What does traveling do for you?
You know, it's true. Traveling is like reading a book. I mean, I think I have learned, I mean, military, we go a lot of places, but it's nothing like doing it socially. And when you can travel, if you have the ability to do that, you just open up yourself to so many different things that you otherwise would not have. And it creates a certain thing in you as a leader, as a mom, as a friend. It creates a certain kind of conversation that you can bring to the table. You know, if you don't go to Budapest, you may read about it, but experiencing Budapest is a different thing you can talk about. If you have never been to China, you may read about it, but experiencing China is a different thing. That's another conversation. And so traveling does that for me. It offers up, you know, those experiences that I can contribute to so many other great conversations, but also it builds capacity. Travel for me has taken me into, you know, situations that I otherwise would not have gotten an opportunity had I not had all of those traveling experiences. And I really believe that. So, and it, you know, travel brings on a certain energy. People know whether you're well read, well fed, and well traveled.
Say that again.
Well read, well fed, and well traveled. I know that by the moment you walk in the room. And one of those are things that I like to acquire over time is having read a great book, great food, and having experienced the world.
And you've done that. I mean, and I'm sure you probably, you know, probably can't count your fingers and toes where you've been, because you guys seem to every year, outside of COVID, that is, you guys go to very special places.
You know, you have to be deliberate about, you know, that. You have to be that part of your life.
Yeah.
And we have done that. So it's been a good ride.
Last question. Your love for capturing stories on film comes from?
You know, again, I have to go back to my call. It has just been, you know, the thing that, you know, the universe has decided. And when the universe decides, it's all good. You know, anytime you're on purpose, purpose is joyful, and joy is happiness. So I think it just comes from that ability to have purpose in your life. And that allows me to be able to tell another person's story, because when you're happy, you can insert that into other people. So that's what storytelling has done for me.
Well, we're going to wrap up here. Denetra, like I said, you and I can talk forever and ever, but before we go, I want you to talk to those women veterans that are watching your interview and give them a message of hope, if you will, considering that the times that we're in right now. We're still in the quarantine. We have the Black Lives Matter movement going on. We all know what's happening with justice for Vanessa Gillen and things of that nature. And some women veterans can be sitting and they're not in a good place right now. Give them a message of hope, if you will, before we close.
You know, I recently, and I'm going to go back to, you know, my initial, you know, gift, and that was education. My last student was a Navy nurse, and she couldn't pass that test. But of course, we know that if you don't pass that test, you lose your career.
Yeah.
And she's now a nurse. So we were able to get her through the course. But I bridged that into your question because she was so devastated. And she was so down. And she had a family. And so this test was going to affect her livelihood in so many ways. So what I say to, you know, veterans, and I said this to my student when she passed the test, and I said, you see, you are so much more than what you originally thought you were. Even though she had already served a lot of time, it was this one obstacle that was going to determine how far she went. But she had to dig into other things to remove that obstacle. Other things beside that service that she had already done. She had already done 10 years or whatever, but that didn't help her at that particular time. It was this obstacle where she had to dig into who she was to remove it. That fear that she had, you know, she had to dig into that. So what I say to veterans who are out there who may be suffering for whatever the reason may be, find a space
Mm.
that you can go to, that you're not fearful. And that's going to help remove that obstacle that you think is holding you back. Whatever that space is, whether it's your family, whether it's friends, whatever that space is that removes fear, that's what's going to get you to the next space. And, you know, we have so many things that people talk about, Sharice, when it comes to women veterans, you know, as we mentioned, the traumas that we faced. And I'm a part of that. You know, one of the reasons why I was able to transition out of those things and conquer all of those things is because I believed in the process. And I go back to that, and I hope that people who are watching me understand that process is everything. It's one of the most valuable things that creates the whole. Don't be afraid of the process that God has given you, whether it's trauma or whether it's joy. Understand that everything happens for a reason. And if you can get to that space mentally and physically, you're going to be better for it in the next space. So as women veterans, we have acquired a lot of things. You know, we've acquired, you know, honor. We've acquired courage. We've acquired resiliency. We've acquired all of these things. But none of that can get us to the next space if we don't accept that process that we have had to go through. And accepting that process means that we own it, just like we own, you know, our veteranship. We own that, and then we talk about it, and then we're able to move forward. So for me, that's how I was able to transition, like I said, effortlessly. Do it because I just owned the fact that this is who I was. And the next step that I was in was going to require me to go through that process. So I did that. And now here we are having a conversation about a production company. So for all of those who are watching, trying to figure out what their next move is and, you know, how they're going to get through the next step, trust the process. Trust that you are exactly where you are today, and, you know, manage it in a way that you remove that obstacle just by managing it, and understand that that process is where you're supposed to be, and not try to rush out of that process, because you have to become someone to get through it. You have to become someone spiritually, mentally, and physically to even get to the next space. So rushing it is not going to be the answer. The answer is owning it. And owning that whatever it is in that particular space, and maybe you're trying to start a business, or you're trying to figure out where you're going to go to the next space. You're trying to figure out, I don't like this job, or I need to get to that job. That space you're in, you need to figure out what lesson you got to learn. Because that lesson is what's going to get you to the next space. So you're more than just that badge that people place on you, on us. You know, we have so much to offer to the table. We have diversity. We have, again, that pedigree that we bring. You know, everything that we own, we bring to the table. Our story, in particular, is the most valuable thing that we bring to the table. So I say to all of them, own who you are, know your story, trust the process, and, you know, move forward in excellence.
Man, that's powerful. That's a great way to end the show today, Ms. Denetra. I appreciate you so much. Like I said, you're doing some incredible, incredible work, and it's glad to kind of hear and see you on screen and talk about your transition. And what a powerful message. I mean, I couldn't have said it better, because that's what women veterans need right now. They need that sense of hope, inspiration, and encouragement. And I hope by seeing and witnessing and hearing the stories on Who's at the Table, we are inspiring so many women to get out of that position where they feel like they can't do or get to that next stage in their lives. And I love the fact of, you know, going through the process. So many times we want to rush through that process. And even me, I feel like I want to get through this process so I can get to the next one.
That's right.
And it causes more harm than good. where all I had to do is sit and be patient. And so that was so encouraging of a message to close the show today. Thank you again, Denetra. I can't wait to see your next film and your next film and your next film. And hopefully one day you'll have an Oscar and I'll be there and say, I knew her when.
Well, I'm going to receive that. And, you know, it's wonderful to see you again. And thank you for having me on your fantastic show. And I'm looking for so many great things coming from you.
Oh, thank you so much. So thank you all for viewing us today. I appreciate you all supporting us and being here at the table. If you want to be a guest on Who's at the Table, definitely reach out to me at cjackson@amvets.org. Thank you all again. Have a blessed day. Be safe and goodwill.